So before there was MySpace and before there was Facebook and even before there was Friendster, there was a proto-social network called Plaxo. It wasn't very fun, but it was useful. And it leveraged network effect to solve that problem of how do you stay connected to the people that you know and care about. Essentially a networked address book. And we were able to grow that to tens of millions of users, and actually Comcast became one of our biggest customers, because those of you in the carrier space probably have somewhere in your PowerPoint deck a slide that shows the convergence between a number of different communications services, and at the center you probably have drawn a networked address book. And right now carriers around the world are trying to figure out whether to build that functionality, to partner with someone, or to buy a company to do it. So really cool stuff, and the partnership with Comcast, which as many of you know has now turned into a deal to be acquired by them, has taken us from 20 million to 50 million nodes in our network. Then Plaxo also has a second service. Last year we were looking at the social networking space and realized that it was evolving pretty quickly into something that we recognized. The first generation of social networks didn't appear to us to be all that interesting. Connecting to strangers as friends isn't at all similar to an address book or the utility of keeping you connected. So we thought we might be able to enter the space with a different twist, and so we did two things. One, we looked out and we saw that the landscape was essentially walled gardens. Walled gardens, places where you could put data in, but you couldn't get your own data back out. And we thought that that really wasn't going to be the model that would win long term, and so we not only created the first kind of open social network called Pulse, but we've been key champions for essentially bringing the industry to a new model, a model in which users are in control of their data and have the ability to take it with them wherever they go and use lots of different tools and services and have them seamlessly interoperate. Of course, that's in our DNA, because Plaxo from the very beginning was about letting users have control of their address book and use it across a wide variety of tools like Microsoft Outlook, the Mac address book, Yahoo Webmail, Gmail, so on and so forth. So it's been really exciting. We've only been on this journey for about a year, and the signs of major change are all around. Every conference I go to, the talk is about data portability, openness, and letting users be able to move their data around. So lots of topics for us to talk about here on the panel, and thanks for being here up at Layer 8.
Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit, just give you some data from Forrester. First of all, a quick show of hands. How many people here are active on social networks on a regular basis? Just a show of hands. Okay, so a good chunk of you. What I'm going to show you on the next slide is some data that we have collected from different countries. It's part of the research I did last year for the book that I just put out. In fact, I have copies of the book afterwards if you'd like to get some. So just see me afterwards. I have 10 copies. But this is the data here. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but it's broken up by countries. And it's a percent of online adults who are using a social networking site or visit a social networking site at least monthly. And we have it for Asia, North America, and also for various countries in Europe. You can see for certain metropolitan regions in Asia in particular, it's very, very high penetration. Metro India, 42%, South Korea, 41%. And then you go on down to U.S. is about 25%. Again, these are adults, so not necessarily including kids under the age of 18. And if you want more cuts of this data by country, by age group, or by gender, you can go to groundswell.forrester.com. We have lots of this data here. It's actually a group called Joiners. It's part of our social technographics. So one other thing, as we go along, because one of the most frustrating things around a panel is that while we're having a great discussion out here, it's hard to incorporate the kind of questions that you may have. So what I suggest is, because this is a communications and peering forum, if you have questions along the way, feel free to text me or email me, because I'm assuming that everyone has a phone at a communications conference. But also, if there's some points of clarification, I'm going to stop after each section and invite also Q&A. But I didn't want to have to hold that until the end of each section. Okay? So the first thing is, what is federation? We talked a little bit about it, and I just want to give my sort of editorial comment. This is the only time I really step in as the moderator, and that is to just put out this idea I've had since last year, that social networks will be like air. So right now, as John was saying, most of the social networks that are out there are walled gardens. And I think in 5 years from now, we'll look back to this time, and from the experiences that you've seen, it's kind of quaint and archaic that you have to go someplace to be social, when we are social creatures overall. So the example I like to give is that oftentimes people will go onto these sites and write a book review, because I just read a book. I may have read like a 4-hour work week or something, a really fun book, and write a review there or maybe on my blog. But when I go to the place where I buy a book, let's say it's Amazon, I see all the reviews. They're reviews from people I don't know. What if I could see my friends' reviews? And so they understand that I'm signed in to Amazon. I can sign in also and let Amazon have permission to see all of my friends on any social network that I am on. If any of those friends have written a review of that book, it'll show up in Amazon because they've given permission to Amazon to show those book reviews too. And so that's the idea of data portability, of your social network being useful to you outside of the social networks themselves. So my question back to you, panelists, is how do you see federation shaking out? How would you describe what this is going to look like, what federation will feel like in the future? And what are some of the key benefits, in particular, to businesses, to individuals, to the industry in general? Anyone want to take a stab at this?
Sure. I mean, I think I completely agree with the notion that that it will become like air, and that one of the analogies I make is to what was going on in 1993. If you wanted to see the future, then look inside AOL, CompuServe, Prodigy. It had all been figured out. It's just that it was a walled garden. And so I think what we'll see is a new phase of the web, which we call the social web. It's when all of the functionality that has been pioneered inside some of these great social networks is available across the entirety of the web. And some of the glimmers of that we see in Google Friend Connect, which is explicitly trying to make it easy for any owner of a website or a web page to make it social just by including a few lines of JavaScript. And in that world, I think we'll see a shakeup in the players and what we do as industry participants. I foresee a services layer in which you've got essentially 3 core components together with Google Friend Connect or without Google Friend Connect. These 3 components are essential to the social web, and they are identity provider, and OpenID will be the technology under the hood there. And you see good examples of that with Yahoo making OpenID something that is consumer friendly, or at least working on that problem. I think we still have some room to go there. Social graph providers, this is essentially flipping the model that we saw with Facebook F8 and to some degree with OpenSocial. Instead of widgetizing the apps and bringing them inside the walled garden, widgetize the social graph and bring it out to applications, devices, and services. And so we see our role in the Google Friend Connect project as being a social graph provider. So when you go to one of those sites and you say, link in my friends or address book from Plaxo, that's us as your friends list as a dial tone available as a part of the services layer. And then the third piece, which is critically important for making this work for real mainstream users, is the role of content aggregators. Examples of that being Plaxo Pulse, also Friend Feed, but there was a period of time a few months ago where there was a new aggregator every week. And these aggregators complete the virtuous cycle, a virtuous cycle similar to what we saw in 94 and 95. At that time it was download a free piece of software to browse the web. The more people who did that, the more people who created websites, and the more people who then downloaded the software. So now it's I discover a new socially enabled site, maybe it's for microbreweries, and I share some content there, and that goes automatically back into my aggregator of choice. My friend Patrick discovers that we have a common interest in Belgian beers that are brewed in the Pacific Northwest, and he then goes to this site that he's just discovered via social discovery, and because we've now fixed all the problems of you don't need to create a new username and password, you don't need to fill out your profile again, all of the stuff that's broken now being fixed, it becomes possible for him to instantly essentially join and share and propel that virtuous cycle forward. So that's probably a little bit wordy, but that's my view of where things are going, and they're going there fast.